You are going to create a business that's going to generate $1 million. Like everything that you see in your mind's eye, everything that you see, you are going to achieve every single thing. You are literally going to achieve everything. So stop stressing, stop worrying, and stay on your path. 7 lessons that I learned on my path to 7 figures. So if you didn't know, and maybe if you're not on my email list, it's your first time meeting me, whatever it is, I have generated $1 million of cash received inside of my business. I sell coaching courses and digital products, and that is from October of 2015 until I hit that in June of 2022. The reason that this is important is every time I set a goal, like I would set a goal, and this, I'm gonna be talking about this in the lessons as I jump into there, but every time I did something and like set a goal and then I would hit the goal, I would immediately set the next goal. And sometimes I would even set the next goal before I even reached the previous goal, because I was like, well, I just really wanna get to this next goal. So maybe if I just set my goal even higher. And I personally feel like I didn't spend enough time in gratitude for what I have currently accomplished, like what I've done. Especially, we're all seeing each other online, right? Like we all see what other people have mentioned that they have done or things that they have done. And I have a lot of powerhouse friends and a lot of them have done $1 million in a year. And it's difficult sometimes for me to sit there and say like, wow, you know, I still haven't done $1 million in a year. But you know, what I realize that I'm doing is I'm stealing my own joy by not stopping to just celebrate. So I've decided, as soon as I made that realization that I had generated $1 million in my business, I decided to just stop. So I removed the current goal that I had put for like this year and then for the next year. I've taken all those goals off. And I'm like, I'm just gonna stop. And I'm literally just gonna express gratitude for where I am right now in this very moment and what I have accomplished. Because if I would have told myself, like this girl that was like barely making it, had bills on bills on bills on bills piled and stacked and couldn't even fix her brakes. She had a friend to like help her fix her brakes. I'm getting emotional now. If I would have sat down and told that girl, don't worry about trying to find a job, or, you know, go ahead, keep applying for a job, you're fine. You are going to create a business that's going to generate $1 million. Like everything that you see in your mind's eye, everything that you see, you are going to achieve every single thing. You are literally going to achieve everything. So stop stressing, stop worrying, and stay on your path. Stay on your journey and just keep at it. Like if I could go back and like talk to her and I'd be like, hey, I'm LaTisha from the future. Which is what I imagine I would have to like tell myself so I would believe myself, like, hey, I'm LaTisha from the future, you know, the password, you know, the buzzword is, you know, whatever. If I would have went back and told myself that, like I was so beaten down from life and from just feeling like everything was such a struggle and like, oh, like I wish I had a rich uncle and like all this stuff, like a lot of thoughts that were going through my mind at the time. If I were to go back and talk to her and say like, hey, you're gonna do it, like that encouragement would have been huge for me. So that's my goal right now, is just to stop and pause and stop looking at everything else. Stop trying to keep moving the carrot, right? Keep moving the stick and literally just say like, you did it. Congratulations. Good job. And I wish I would have done this more often at each level. Like when I had made that first $5,000, I wish I would have done it at that level. When I was first able to, you know, put myself on payroll and like have a paycheck that comes from Financial Success Media, like I wish I would have stopped and just like paused for that second instead of saying, okay, well now I want to pay myself 6 figures. Like I just wish I would have just stop. So big lesson, I guess that's maybe the first lesson. And so that's part of what I want to share today. So I've got my phone right here, which has the title of 7 lessons learned on my path to 7 figures, but it's not, it's more than 7. First thing I learned is that you have to get uncomfortable in order to make money. And the reason that I say this is the first time that I really felt uncomfortable was when I started getting out of my introvert comfort zone and actually like pushing out and making sales. And this required me to, you know, reach out to people, which is like, that's like the biggest like introvert fear is like, okay, time to reach out. It's like, no, I just want people to come to me, right? But that was huge for me, was learning to reach out, you know, send text messages, DMs, and even just follow up with people Like, just because someone doesn't respond back doesn't mean that you should just forget about them. Like, no, you can follow up with them. So I realized that I needed to get uncomfortable, and getting out of your comfort zone is what actually stretches you. Okay. So there's a reason that it's called getting out of your comfort zone. If you imagine it and think of it as like being in a box, and it's comfortable because it's cozy, right? It's snug around you. And when you get inside of another box, right, a bigger box, you have to expand and stretch for that box to be comfortable, right? You're not going to shrink the box. You're not going to shrink your goal. You're not going to shrink your desire of what you want. You need to expand so that it's comfortable again. And that's what getting out of your comfort zone allows you to do. So, I did a lot of uncomfortable things. Like I said, doing sales calls, sending DMs, scheduling people, following up with people, learning to set boundaries, things like that. And that was a huge, huge lesson for me, and something that I will definitely take on with me. Second, you have to be willing to make mistakes. It's not about being fearless. It's about acting in spite of fear. So you have to be willing to make mistakes. It's not about being fearless, but being willing to act in spite of fear. And this is something that I will continue to say over and over and over again, especially like a lot of times I get clients that, when we finally get down to the nitty gritty of like, what's going on? Why haven't you done X, Y, Z? It's usually some version of like, I'm scared, right? And it's understandable. We all battle with fear. What you need to realize and recognize is that everyone struggles with fear, and fear is never going to really go away. You just become better equipped to deal with it, and you learn to move in spite of it. And so one of the big things that I learned is that if there's something that I'm scared to do, or something that I'm scared of doing, or something that I find to be a little bit overwhelming, I ask myself a question of, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail, right? So if I knew I were going to succeed, what would I do? And then I take action from that standpoint, from the answer to that question. Because if I know that I'm not going to fail, then I'm like, okay, well, actually, I would do this, right? Like I would go even harder. I would do this thing, or I would go even bigger, or whatever it is. If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And I feel like when you come up with the answer to that question, you can take action around the fear. Like you just sort of walk around it. It's still there. You're still scared, but your thought and your mind is on, well, I'm not going to fail because this is what I would do if I succeeded. And therefore, because I'm doing this thing, I will succeed. It's kind of like a little bit of a brain trick that you can do on yourself. Number 3, you have to act fast before fear sets in. So this goes hand in hand with the previous one, which is that fear is going to still be there. And the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to take action. This is the reason why that quote, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? It's because people who wait longer and longer and longer to take action on their desires, their dreams, and their goals eventually allow fear to grow bigger and bigger and bigger to where it becomes overwhelming, and it does become overwhelming. And so you'll notice this, that there's a small percentage of new business owners as you get up older and older and older. Why is that? Because that fear is just taken over. You'll notice a lot more bright-eyed and bushy-tailed 20-something-year-olds that are like, oh, I'm going to start a business. And so I think there's a happy medium in there, but you just have to remember that the faster you learn how to take action, the faster you're going to be able to move. And it's because you're not allowing fear to set in, and you don't want it to settle in, get comfy. And so for me, like, this is going to be different for everyone. It could be different for everyone, but my process in order to basically slap fear in the face is I make an investment. And it's not always a big investment, like several $1,000s in a coach or a mentor or whatever it is. Sometimes it could be an investment in like a course. Sometimes it could be an investment in a new outfit or a new camera, whatever it is, like live streaming camera. Like whatever that fear is that you have, if you take action in the opposite direction, then you're gonna be okay, right? Because you're moving away from the fear. So if, for example, let's say I went starting a new YouTube channel and I was saying, okay, my fear is that my videos are gonna flop. Okay, well, if I knew I couldn't fail and I was gonna succeed, what would I do? And then immediately after that, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna take action in that direction. Well, if I knew I couldn't fail, then I would record with any camera I have. Okay, great. And then you get your camera and you start recording, right? So you have to take action before fear sets in. Number 4, all right, you must learn to ask and be unattached to the outcome, because you will hear no before you hear the yes that you want. And so we can take this even to the smallest thing of like asking for extra cherries, right? What if they say no? Like, you have to become unattached to the outcome. Like, okay, I'm gonna ask for extra cherries, but if they say no, it's like, okay, fine. But I'm gonna get my extra cherries, right? But then some of those bigger things, like some things that, you know, you might desire where you're like, okay, I desire this. Like, I'll just use me. Last year, I was like, I'm going to make, I think it was 500K was my goal for last year. Yeah. My goal for last year, was it last year or the year before last? I don't even remember. But I was like, I want to make $500,000, right? And I didn't get there. I got to 314, which is great. And I was upset. I was like upset, a little bit upset. Like I did a year in review video that I still haven't published, like right after, at the start of the year, I recorded it. But I was just kind of a little upset because I was like, well, you know, actually my goal was 1.2 million. That's what it was. And that's why, okay, so I had first initially set it for 500K and then I was like, well, let's make it 1.2. And so it's like, I just kept like pushing this carrot down and I just didn't even stop to say like, you're doing great, keep it up. You're growing, you went from 100 to 250 to 314. You started out with 35 and went to 65 to 70, 75, like you're seeing growth. So stop moving the carrot, okay? Sit down for a second, all right? But my point is that you have to learn to become unattached to the outcome because I was so attached to the outcome of this 1.2 million of like earning this revenue number, making $100,000 per month and feeling so like disheartened because I was watching other people who were doing it like, oh, how can I do what they did or whatever it is. It's like, I didn't realize that it was just a no, like a not right now, right? Instead of focusing on that and I like just keeping my perseverance, like I just got discouraged. And I feel like that slowed me down a lot more than it had to, okay? It's okay to run at your own pace. This one came to me just this morning because I was thinking about how the million has come over 5 years. And I just saw a thumbnail on YouTube that was like, someone made 100 million. It's like, people do stuff, okay? There's always going to be somebody that's doing something differently than you, or someone who's doing what seems to be better than you, or someone who's doing more. And like, you have to learn to run at your own pace. Everybody has a different pace. I am not a marathon runner. I'm a sprinter. Okay. When I get a project, I go full force. And then all of a sudden I'm like, whew, okay, I need a break. And that's how my business operates. I operate in sprints. And so when I know that I need a little bit of a break, I'm actually okay to sit down. Because I operate in sprints, did that cause me to take 5 years to get to 1 million? Maybe, who knows? The point is that I'm not gonna suddenly turn into a marathon runner just because I wanna generate $1 million in a year, because that's not me. I've either gotta get there with my sprint gene, right? Which gives you bigger glutes anyways. I either gotta get there with my sprint gene or I gotta give it up, right? Become a whole different person, start training like a marathon runner, eating like a marathon runner, thinking like a marathon runner. But I just know that like, that's not what I desire. I'm a Gemini. I love variety. If I don't have variety, my soul just withers, okay? So understand what's for you. The other thing is like understanding like what your personal pace is, where you feel maybe a little bit exertion, right? You might feel a little, not comfortable, like we're not walking on the treadmill, but like, when you punch it and you're going to a little bit of exertion, like understand what your pace is, because you might look over at the next treadmill and that person's like running and doing, handstands and flips. And you're like, man, I wish I could do that, but that's not your pace. It's okay to run at your own pace. This one I also came up with this morning. You can't go into the next round with the same level tools you had in the last round. The reason that you can't go into the next round with the same tools you had at the previous round, the reason this came to mind is, so there's this game my husband likes called Borderlands. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. And in the video game, like there will be a level that he plays, and when his character is at like a level 5, and the people he's fighting are at a level 10, it's really hard. It's almost impossible. He's like, oh man, this is so hard, right? And then he continues through the game, he levels up, and then he becomes like a level 8. And then he goes back to that same board and he plays the level 10 people, and then he's not as hard. And then, he goes back to the game, picks up loot and stuff like that. And then, now he's going back and he's a level 10. And he's like, boom, 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 done, right? And kills them, and he moves on to the next thing. He's played this game a couple times with a couple characters. Don't let him know I told you. The point is that when it's time for you to go to the next round, you are going to have to level up. You have to level up. You're not gonna be able to use the same tools. As much as you think, people say, what got you here will get you everywhere. No, it's not true. I'm sorry. Okay. They're talking about like your personality. Like, I don't know, even that, like you're just going to have to level up. I call it assume the throne, right? Like it's time for you to step into that next level version of yourself. You cannot go into that next round with the same tools at the same level that you had at the previous one because, maybe you'll beat them, but it's going to be hard. Like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to struggle? Why not level up? Do what you need to do, personal development, whatever it is, so that you can go into the next round and dominate. All right, last one. There is nothing wrong with one of those multiple streams of income being a J-O-B. Ding. Okay. There's nothing wrong with one of those multiple streams of income being a job. I feel like, I've been a little bit guilty of this also in the past where I kind of like, main thing I wanted to do was like leave my job. I was like, oh, I want to leave my 9 to 5. I want to leave my 9 to 5. I want to leave my job. And everyone's like, oh, you need multiple streams of income. Like you can have one of those multiple streams of income being your job. Like there's people who work full time, make 6 figures, and they also make 6 figures in their business. It's okay. Like you can do whichever. And full transparency, I've had like a lot of little jobs here and there along the way as I've been building my business. There was one time where I worked with a little boy. His name was Jacob. He was so adorable. And I picked him up from school every day and he had special needs. Picked him up from school every day, hung out with him for a couple hours until his grandparents got home. And I recorded like little videos as I was, walking him. We walked outside, I would do little videos. He was doing his own thing, playing with sticks, whatever it was. And so like, there's more than just full-time business ownership, okay? One time worked with an agency, took on some work with an agency, started running Facebook ads for them, right? One time was as a contractor, one time was as a W-2. Like, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is that you feel good in what you're doing. If you don't like your job, you can get a different job. You don't have to go full-time entrepreneur just because you don't like your job. It's not really a popular thing to say because everyone's glorifying the entrepreneurial hustle, but like this shit is hard. I'm sorry, excuse me, but it's not easy. It really isn't. And anyone who will tell you that it is lying to you. It's not easy. And it's more than just making money. It's also dealing with the internal struggles that you're going to be going through as you're building the business, the self-doubt. Like entrepreneurship has been personal development for me and it's helped me to become a better person. But that means like sometimes I'm my own therapist when I probably need to just like actually speak to someone. I'm dumping stuff on my husband every now and then, So it's not easy and it's not the holy grail. The holy grail is feeling good about what you're doing, that you enjoy what you're doing, that you feel like you're contributing, and that you've defined it for yourself, number one. Like that's the holy grail. For the longest time for me, it was about money and success and being able to fly first class and doing all these things. And now I feel like I've shifted just a little bit in terms of what my definition of success is. But I'll be honest, in order for me to get here, I had to pay off my student loans. So I'm not going to say anything about like, you should change your goals. For some people, it is money. Like, it's got to be money. If somebody would have come to me before and said like, don't make money your goal, I would have been like, screw you. I just want to get rid of these loans, right? So I'm not saying anything like that. All I'm saying is that it's important to understand what success truly means to you and don't let anybody else define it for you. And that's where I will end this one today.